Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to pull up my slides. If you'll just bear with me for 2 seconds, please. I'm going to, let's see here.
Hello, Sarah. Welcome.
Okay. And here we go. Let's see if this works. Okay, can you see that? Is that working for you?
I can see it.
You can?
I can.
Okay.
Can others? Thumbs up maybe from people who can see it.
Just so I have a sense that that it's visible for everyone, that would be great. Okay, we're good to go. All right. Now I'm trying to pull up my chat screen as well, but I don't think I can do that at the same time. Am I oh no, here we go. What's this gonna do? There we go. We got a chat screen there too. Okay, I think we got this. So let's give it a go. Whoops. Okay, so first of all, good morning, everyone, and so happy to be part of this this morning. Attempt to share some insight in the world of operations. This presentation, it's effective. It's called Operating in Pandemic Times. It's affectionately called that due to our beloved COVID, which also, I didn't know if you heard this, but it's also nicknamed Rona, Miss Rona. Have you heard that name? So if you ever hear people talk about Miss Rona, they're talking about the COVID virus. So just a few things that I wanted to talk about here very quickly, just very briefly about myself. So honored to be part of your operations presentation today. I've been a member, part of the team here at WESC for a handful of years now. And me personally, I bring over 20 years of experience in business strategy, branding, marketing. I'm also an entrepreneur myself. And I work with businesses locally, nationally, and internationally. Um, and because I am in that space too, as a consultant and as a business owner, I absolutely understand the challenges that are out there, especially when it comes to trying to grow a business during pandemic times. So full confession, I really enjoy presenting in person. That's my love. And so when I don't get to see your faces and don't get to see a lot of the reactions and comments, I feel disconnected a little bit. So I want to take full advantage of that chat box. So I'm just going to do a little quick test here. Do you suppose you could take 2 seconds maybe and just write something, just hey, Nick, how's it going? Message in that chat box. And also, maybe just for fun, you could even just tell me something that you're grateful for this morning. How's that sound? So then I know the chat box is working, and then I can stay connected to you and see some reactions as well. So with that, and what I was going to say is I'll keep an eye on the chat box, but I'm super dependent on Janet. Janet's going to keep me in check, make sure that I'm doing it, that I'm responding where I need to. Otherwise, I will just keep on going. So, all right. So, whoops. Let's see here. Okay, I have to click it. So really quickly, basic agenda. A little bit about me. I shared why operations, the big picture. Let's talk about some operational resilience and some next steps as well. And so what I wanted to share here is this presentation. It's a compilation of things that I've learned, lessons in the trenches, but it's also some research that I have been investigating and learning about, especially when I'm providing support with our entrepreneurs, because Operations, there's so many different moves depending on the type of business that you're in, whether you're a product business or a service business. How you do things is going to be very different. So, with that, I wanted to attempt to try to bring a sort of overall picture, and then I'm going to stop throughout the presentation, and I'm going to request some dialogue. Okay, so let's do that. Let's move along. And as I get to those little points, I'm going to stop. We're going to have some dialogues, and I'm going to learn about your businesses so that we can make sure that this information is not theory, but it's actually very applicable to your business specifically. Okay, so. So I want to just really quickly speak to execution and operations. There's in general, there's the classic 5 pillars of business: sales and marketing, finance, HR, operations. Have you heard of those 5 things? Heads, give me some. There we go. That's what I needed. Okay, thumbs, figures. That's okay. Perfect. We're good. If management and leadership is all about where you're going as a business, if finance is about the strategic use of money, if human resources is all about your people strategy, and if branding and marketing is all about being clear on the value you provide, why your clients should pick you, and then amplifying that message, well then operations is really it's the execution of those things. So I every so often come across this particular quote, and I quite like it, and it really sort of tells the tale. Business operations is really the stuff you do on a day-to-day basis. It's those activities that happen, those activities that we can look at and optimize to make your business more profitable, streamlined, make sure you can cover your expenses and make a good profit. So that's really the heart and soul of execution. I sometimes want to go in a few other different directions when we have this conversation, but I want to try to be laser focused today and stay on task. So our goal today is to take a look at some efficient ways that you can plan, deliver your production, manufacturing, if you're in that space, and services. So one other thing I wanted to mention is that with operations, this particular edition of the Exchange, it was affectionately called the Rebound edition, because we wanted to focus on how you get back to business amidst COVID-19. So therefore, I will try to minimize the operational theory going forward. I have one additional slide to share, but then otherwise, we're going to dive into, say, as you're running your business, let's have a look at some very specific things that you might be thinking about or need to think about in order to grow your business. So if this slide is a little too heavy for you on a Tuesday morning after a long weekend, maybe this one's a little easier for you to digest. So if you think about your execution of your business, and you say, okay, well, maybe I think it's really organized and orchestrated, but then if you do a gut check, is it that way, or is it a little bit more like Elaine on Seinfeld when she's rocking the moves on the floor, as she said, to get the party started, somebody's got to do it. So I hope that reference makes sense to you, and if it doesn't, I'm sorry. The point being only that the top screen is really to reflect sort of what it feels like when your operations are running the way they were supposed to be doing, the way they were meant to be, as opposed to a very haphazard and not so well orchestrated version of it. All right, so very quickly then, big picture. I'm going to come back to this. Oh, I love those. I love your chat comments. So those are fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so again, really quick, operations, if we talk about that being the inner workings of your business so that it runs as efficiently as possible. Do you see the blue box at the bottom, which is in the primary activities? This is your beginning to end. Here's how I run my business. This is what my business is all about. Now, depending on your businesses, it can, because if you're in services or in products, um, the the depth of any one of those may be more or less depending on your type of business. So if you're not building widgets or product, your operations might feel a little bit more minimized in comparison to, say, the need to do marketing and sales. So really, that bottom row that says primary activities, that's the whole sort of spectrum. That's the whole value chain of operations. Um, so if you're a retail business, do we have any retail businesses in this in this cohort? I'm just checking. Yeah, we have some. Okay, so
Yes, we
oh,
do.
right on. Thank you. Um, with retail, the daily goal tends to be to stock items that your customers want and at the price that they're happy to pay. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah. So for ops especially in the retail environment, it's all about perfecting your inventory. That's a big part of the business. Restaurants. Do we have restaurant owners here as well? Maybe not. Sure. Okay. If you identify, that's fine. I'll share a little bit too. With restaurants, it's similar to the retailer in that you have inventory, but I will also make sure that we sorry when it comes to restaurants, I want to make sure that we note that it's like a retailer, but one of the challenges we have is that we have perishable inventory. So that's the one of the most significant differences. So restaurants, for example, you might have to deal with, say, signing contracts to have a regular supply of food coming in, or organizing walk-in refrigerators to make sure that it's optimized. And service companies, you have client-facing and business-related opportunities to focus on. And I know there's a handful of service companies in there, just knowing some of you through WESC as well. So
And we also, Nick, we've had a comment here too that I know it applies to quite a few. We also have a number of solopreneurs.
yes. Okay, excellent. This and this model, does I look at the chat, it just talks about also, does it apply to solopreneurship and looking to expand into e-commerce, right? So I'll answer the entrepreneurship, solopreneurship. I'll speak to first. The e-commerce, absolutely, and I'm going to speak to that in one of the next couple slides as well. So yes to that. Does this model apply to solopreneurship? It absolutely does. It just means that you typically end up wearing more than one hat, is what happens when you look at solopreneurship. So sometimes the old saying is in the restaurant, where a restaurant of one person staffed, you're the cook, you're the dishwasher, you mop the floors, you take the orders. Solopreneurship is very much applicable here too. It's just that the depth upon which you're going to do these things yourself tends to be something you can't distribute amongst a team. So it absolutely is applicable to solopreneurship. Okay. I don't see any other questions that are on that list, so I'll keep going. So yeah, so if you're a service-based company, you can have client-facing, and you can have business-related opportunities to grow and expand and grow the business. Client interactions, right? Like, what could happen more quickly? Is a customer experiencing any unnecessary notifications, experiences that you would like to get corrected? And also on the service side of things, let's talk a little bit about the actual business, the business related challenges and opportunities using operations. So for example, if you've done a project, if you've ever done a project that has gone over budget, have you looked at it and said, you know, what can I do next time to make sure that it won't go over budget? So really asking those questions, taking a look at how you are executing your business, really looking for those opportunities to make it better. That's what we're trying to do here. That's what the whole spirit of operations is all about. Okay. And so for the manufacturers and for those, is there, if I can even get a little show of hands, is there anybody who's in the making of products? Are you manufacturing? Are you creating? Yep. Okay. So Chantel, yeah. So for folks like Chantel and others as well, you know, you're sort of the original definition of what operations was all about, because a lot of times operations grew from the journey of making physical goods in the first place. You know, everything from assembly lines, bottlenecks in production, those types of challenges. That's really where operations and the science of operations came from in the first place. Digital companies. Do we have some digital companies in the team here? We do. Right on. Okay. So some of your operational challenges maybe are going to be around personnel. There's an optimal way of hiring, training, mentoring your staff. Collaboration is key. I know a lot of times when it comes to digital, that there's a lot of collaboration required. So software, for example, might depend on um, your software might depend on another person's software. So therefore, collaboration, especially in the digital space, is of utmost importance. Making decisions between whether it makes sense to have people in-house for certain capacities or whether it makes sense to hire them externally. So therefore, there's a lot of ways in which operations can apply to you, but again, depending on the nature and your industry of business, it varies dramatically. So operations, really the key for it is finding ways to do business better and better, so that you can make your business more efficient, maximize the revenues, and continue to thrive. Does that make sense? Whoops. My screen had a mind of its own and wanted to revisit the Zumba page to you. So there, it's over. Okay, so if we go back again to operations and as it relates to COVID, so I've got 5 themes that I want to talk about with you here today. So number 1 is getting clarity on operations amidst a COVID or a pandemic. So COVID changed the demand for products and services in every sector. I don't think there's any one category of business that did not experience something. Sometimes it made it better. Sometimes the demand increased. So it also exposed weaknesses in supply chain as well. So a lot of businesses come March and April, what they were saying was, maybe this will go away if we just wait long enough. Do you remember saying that yourself? Maybe even like, oh, you know, like, what is this? Is this going to be? Is this a couple more weeks and then it's all done, or is this going to be here for a while? There was that realization when people said, yeah, this isn't going anywhere anytime soon. We're going to have to deal with this. And companies did deal with it. They adapted, they made changes. I remember even saying when it came to from the marketing lens that it takes, the old saying is that it takes 21 days to change to form a new habit. Well, when it comes to marketing, a lot of times when I look at marketing strategies, I would say that, you know, it's too expensive or you can't change consumer behavior. I think I even remember saying it would take a pandemic to actually to get people to change their behavior as well. So, um, okay, so what I wanted to just mention then is that um companies are realizing that there's a lot they can do to change the way that their businesses move forward into the future and sort of amidst COVID and a post-pandemic world. So I've got 5 themes that I want to share. I want to jump into right now. And I also want to start opening up the microphone or having these conversations with you so that we can turn this into a bit of a dialogue. Okay, so I want to just move away from the theory and let's dive in and let's just have some conversations as well. Okay, so number 1 is about building operational resilience. This is the number 1 theme that was identified by businesses in Saskatchewan, in Canada, globally. So what this is all about redesigning operations and supply chains to protect the business. Okay, so what were they doing? What are businesses doing to make sure that their operations are as seamless and continuous as possible? They want to avoid potential shocks and disruptive events. So the first thing is, and by the way, if there's anything that feels jargony, I'd love it if you could jump in or type. You could share something with me just so that I know that I'm explaining it in real speak. That's something that I take fairly seriously. So I want to make sure that I'm communicating in a way that that you can absorb and it makes sense. So the very first thing is the global asset footprint. What we're doing here is companies are saying they're going to increase online and omni-channel delivery methods. That means they want to make sure people are looking at how they are taking their business, how they are converting and moving more and more of the processes online. So, simple example is restaurants, for example, who started maybe focusing on order taking online as opposed to in person. So for those businesses that were used to a traditional bricks and mortar approach and said, this is working fine, there's no issues. What they discovered is that that people, clients, customers feel more comfortable these days doing and leveraging online technologies to fulfill their orders. So more and more businesses, they're looking at what they can do online. So global asset footprint means if you were dependent on a number of different products that need to come in, is there a way that you can do it without having to pick up the phone and call them and hope that there's someone at the other end in order to fulfill that order? Similarly, to be able to get your inventory. Similarly, if your business is a service-based business, the more you can find ways to do things online so that people can just log on at whatever time they want to. More and more businesses are saying it makes sense to move online. So that probably
Nick, do you find now that that's really an expectation?
it is. Some businesses have not really. Some businesses pre-COVID have been absolutely doing that transformation. Some needed COVID, I think, in order to finally say we need to do this. Yeah, so it's you're 100%.
I find it's almost an expectation now. Like if we're going to order something, if we're going to book an appointment, if we're going to do anything, I think COVID has ramped up our own expectations as service, as someone who buys services or purchases online, or we're always looking for that option now that I think it's just been magnified since COVID.
100%. Do you find, and this is to anybody, do you find that if you were if you're given the option of making a phone call to a business or just going online and using their online forums, do you prefer doing it online? More and more businesses are certainly moving that way. Yeah. Mandy, yeah, Janet, others are saying online is the way to go, and it makes sense. The other thing, in with respect to bullet number one, is the global assets. Also looking at, are you dependent on products or services that are out of your region? And that it's that returning to localized model, where if you are dependent on other services and products to fulfill your orders, um, you have a certain amount of additional security knowing that it's local or regional, because then you can actually be sure that it's going to get fulfilled, as opposed to a high dependency on products, say, from overseas. Wasn't the rule? I mean, we've talked about this a lot in in a general sense, where it seemed like for a while there everything was made in China. Like it just seemed like that you looked at the products and you'd look at many items and many of them would say made in China. So given the global climate and supply chain risks, delays of productions, it's really hard to depend on one country anymore. So what it's done is COVID has said to us, but is it necessarily to always just find the absolute cheapest price of the product? If that's why you're buying it from there, can we not look at other parts of the world and say, why can't we do more locally or regionally? So even if it's not, if you're in Saskatchewan, is there parts, if possible, if there's things you can find within Saskatchewan, isn't there an opportunity for you to support? It's really that support local, but the business lens of it is, it's not only supporting local, it's also giving you some confidence in your supply chain. I hope that makes sense.
I wonder if we could have just a little bit of feedback from those who are our local retailers in terms of the buy local movement. And I know that for some of you, it has definitely been a positive, coming out of COVID. I just wondered if some of you could speak to that. Sandy?
Yeah, I'd like that too, please.
Sarah, do you want to? Yeah, jump in, Sarah.
Just to say that with Little Manitou Art Gallery, because we have connected with, 150 different Saskatchewan artists, once people were enjoying a little bit of local adventure and coming out from Saskatoon and Regina to Manitou Beach, I heard over and over again that they were looking for something that they could take home because they were determined to support local, support the business, support the artists. It was almost like, just show me something I can buy. Yeah, because they wanted, it was as much to find something they loved, but even more so to support local.
100% agree. And it can make all the difference in the world, right? Because you don't want to just take something that is, from other parts of the world and just simply put our brand, like our label on it, and say, do you want to buy this cup, even though it wasn't actually made here? Just as an example. I agree. I would love to hear others. Yeah, right. I'd love to hear from others on your efforts. And is this something that's on your radar? Is this something that's on your mind? The idea of looking at the things that you use as inputs to run your business and say, I think I might be able to find those more local than I have in the past. And this is when we're opening it up to hear from you.
My business is within the cathedral area, and we work as a business group. And right now we usually do Light Up the Village. And because of the restrictions of the number of people that can come into the stores, we're now looking at doing possibly 2 nights and a day, doing it by appointment. So as a local group, we're actually supporting each other and trying to do, thinking outside the box. How can we adapt to COVID, but still have people come into our business? Because typically on Light Up the Village, we can have, in my little store, I have a restriction of 3 people. During Light Up the Village, I can have up to 15 people in my store. So this is a huge adjustment. So as a group, as a business group, as a community, we're trying to figure out different ways of doing things.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Jewel. Is there someone else who'd like to share as well?
I still do curbside. I'm doing creative things like tea bingo, because I own a tea shop. So try to get people more with social media, interacting more that way. So through Facebook, through Instagram, just thinking outside the box. Try to get people coming into the store, but not physically coming into the store. So we're trying to do a lot of different things.
Awesome. Thank you. No, that's good.
I will say for myself, sorry to cut you off there, Nick.
Please, Lorraine.
All the ventures that I'm looking at getting into, it can be really hard to source things like base materials for skincare production within Saskatchewan. So of course, I'm trying my best to support Canadian businesses, Saskatchewan businesses when and where I can. And then in terms of, clothing, I'm sure Chantal can discuss this as well. If you're wanting to do, printed services, things like that, it can be a bit of a challenge to beat the prices that you could find on a print on demand service online, for example. So maybe you could touch on that. What are our negotiating powers in terms of being, an allied local business, wanting to keep our business dollars within the province?
100%. If I do have a question for you, Mandy, on that front. Do you find, or are our clients and customers, do you think people are asking more and more? Do you yourself even ask the question, where is it made? Because that right there is an important conversation that people are now asking more. They asked it before, but they're asking it more, and so now it matters. Please, love to hear from you on this.
I think it really depends on the product. So I retail self-care products already. That's bath salts, muscle balm, all these types of things. For them, it's more about a recognized brand than necessarily did someone in Saskatoon make this muscle balm, or was it produced in the United States? It's something certainly that is on the front of my awareness in terms of looking for products to retail moving forward, which is why I'm looking at producing my own line. That being said, in terms of clothing, I'm not sure how local it is. In terms of Chantal, I'm sure she creates, designs, sews a lot of her own line, right? Whereas for myself, if I were to have a sweatshirt made or something, maybe that sweatshirt is Gildan. Maybe Gildan operates in the United States. They ship that product to Canada. And then whether you buy it from a Saskatchewan printing company or located in Toronto somewhere, they're just screen printing it, right? So it's a question of how local can we be? Yes, I agree that it's important, but we also need to think about how much can we afford to be spending when a lot of us have limited cash flow, right?
Just want to jump in there. Certainly understand the manufacturing issues, and I think we do try and buy local when we can. Although the trend isn't there nationally, Canadian Apparel Federation stats are not saying that we'll buy Canadian over something else. Price still plays a point. But I'd like to emphasize too, though, when you are buying, let's say it's a Gildan sweatshirt, and you're having it screen printed at your local screen printer, you are still supporting a Saskatchewan business, even though the product didn't directly come from them. So I think we can look for opportunities in the supply chain to still support our local or Saskatchewan businesses.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that. Going with Mandy, I totally agree with what she said. It's interesting though, because I'm sure most of you or many of you have been into like the locally handmade shops, whether it's like With These Hands or you go to Our Best to You shows or whatever. And they say it's all handmade. But when you really know the backstory of it all, it really isn't all handmade. like that product does come from somewhere, you're just maybe assembling it, or you're adding a screen printing to it. Like there's so many different, and I'm not trying to put any business down, because I will admit I bring in stuff that says made in China, but I am still a local business and you are still supporting me, but I also still have the made in Canada stuff as well. But you can say the stuff made in Canada, well, that fabric isn't made in Canada. We don't do that here. So where do you draw the line, right? So, but I guess
there are guidelines for whether you're made in Canada. So to meet a made in Canada guideline, you have to have a certain percentage of your product that is made in Canada. So it often does, there's only 20% of that 100% of whether you're made in Canada is that the fabric is outsourced from another country. So there actually are fairly stringent guidelines on what in fact can be considered made in Canada.
Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of interesting to know, like I'm in a handmade store in a way, but like I had to approach the owner and be like, I need to run my business and be able to sell any product I want in there. And by just strictly saying handmade, when the person to the right of me says made in Bangladesh, but they've just printed beautiful on it, what really is, I don't know, I guess. That's where I kind of struggle with some things, but
your point is well taken, and I want to just echo a comment that Janet had made earlier too. Definitely, it may not be possible to have end-to-end, totally made local product, but the more you start to look at your total supply chain to say, where do I get the initial product from? Where do I apply, say, a print or add something of value to it? Look at those and just ask yourself which ones and how many of those things make sense for me to bring it to a more local or regionalized service. You don't have to do the whole thing if you can't. And I heard that comment, and it's a fair statement that sometimes you just can't. And I'm also going to draw attention to that on the slide. There's that challenge statement, which is, yeah, and how do you do this without unsustainable increases? I'm going to speak to that on the very next slide as well. But really taking a good look at making or buy. What makes sense? How can you get those things a little bit closer to home? And also paying attention to your supply chain. Some organizations, this may not perfectly apply to the solopreneur, but on the other hand, it still is relevant that you're going to need to keep an eye on where you're sourcing your products from, because if you're not paying attention to it, those prices could creep up. They could have product shortages, and then you're going to be directly affected as well. So having a handle on your supply chain and trying to bring things a little bit more, every step you can possibly make that could help bring it a little bit more in your control is going to help you out. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to move. So this is number one. I'm recognizing the time as well. So I'm going to move to the next one. But by the way, I'm absolutely loving this. This conversation, the conversations are more important than the theory. The theory was here just to facilitate and get everybody talking. So I really like the fact that we're having these kind of conversations, which is awesome. Accelerating end-to-end digitization. This is another theme that has been emerging more and more. So what that is how do you go from so it's almost like the opposite end. Now it's no longer talking about the inputs that you're getting in order to provide your product. It's how do you go from you to your end customer, that end-to-end digitization, because you want to be able to make it as easy as possible for your customer to go online or do something that they can place their order, they can specify what they want, they can hit submit, and the order is in your hands and you are already on to delivery, as opposed to they had to wait until you picked up the phone or you didn't even have that offering. So to Janet's point earlier this morning about, there's almost that expectation to digitize more and more. But again, in truth, it's taken something like the pandemic for some businesses to actually make that change. So on this note, we're just talking about the value change, even dealing, the value chain, and how moving to digital makes sense to service your customer. I'd love to hear from you say your business and how are you dealing with it.
Has anyone had some really big technology changes? Are you now allowed booking online that maybe you weren't before? I know a number of you have gone to online sales that weren't there before. Sarah's got her hand up. Jump in.
Yeah, I want to type it, but quite honestly, I can say it so much faster, so I give up on chat.
Please
call
speak.
me old. My son would be doing it with his thumbs. So I participate, just I guess an anecdotal story that I participated with. SAS Galleries had online shopping. It has definitely been on my radar that I wanted to get into having some kind of e-store, but I hesitated with the idea of trying to maintain inventory online, knowing there were things walking out the door in person, and not wanting to sell something that I'd already sold. Because everything is a one of a kind, I don't have multiple. Anyway, SAS Galleries did this online shopping for 10 days, and it was remarkable. For me as a first timer, experiencing that it all boiled down to just shipping, and there wasn't the customer service schmoozing of so many people. So now I am, personal challenge is to set up an e-store for my own gallery. Of course, it becomes a work up front of, the framework is there, but now it's all photographed because it's individual things, photographing, measuring, and if you want it to be able to calculate the shipping, it's even weighing. So there's all this upfront stuff that you don't know if it will actually turn into sales. But you can't drum up the sales until you have created something that is the attraction. So it's almost, I'm back at doing the mortar and boards of creating the store before I can market it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
It's an absolute true story. The conversation of saying, could I move my business to totally digital sounds interesting. Is it something you can do overnight? Depends on your business. Sometimes you're not going to be able to. It's going to take time. I like knowing though that if it's at least on your radar to say, well, I may not get totally end to end digitized, but some parts, the parts that make sense for my business, yeah, I'm exploring that. So thanks, Sarah. Is there someone else who'd like to share on that too? Anything you might be doing to move more and more towards being able to fulfill your customer requirements online?
I have a website that I do online, and it's throughout Canada. But what I'm finding right now is that people want that one-on-one contact. Mm-hmm. Because David's Tea has closed here in Regina, I'm getting more of their customer base. And what I'm finding is people are coming in and they prefer to do brick and mortar because they can get it immediately. I think we kind of live in a quick self-gratification type of society now, so people want their items now. I'm getting people coming in saying, I don't want to wait 2 weeks. I've got an order. It's not coming in till Thursday. So they're actually coming in and purchasing. So I'm finding that I need to do both, my brick and mortar and social media and my online.
I'm not surprised to hear that. What you're doing is the slide says digital transformation of customer journeys and value chains. But the other part to that is sometimes your customer journey is actually that they want to come in and talk to somebody, we need to know that, and we need to respect that. So I can appreciate why you're saying it's actually not just exclusively moving digital. It's really being responsive to what your customer is looking for. Love it. Thank you.
Nick, I wonder if you can speak a little bit in those examples, but I also want to apply this back to those who are not product-based.
Yep.
But it can feel like you are running two businesses. So, you know, we heard a little bit from Sarah that you're managing two inventory lines, or how can you manage two inventory lines? But also I'd like to hear from some of the service-based businesses on how that's affected them, because they are doing in-person and virtual businesses as well.
Anyone? I can jump in, Janet, just a little bit about, yeah, thanks for your question. I think one of the, so my business, executive coaching, one-on-one coaching in organizations, delivering leadership development. And so everything shifted with COVID to a, just not now, we're just going to wait and see kind of thinking. And yet there's this time where there's an opportunity to shift to an online forum. So that's when my growth edge, moving programs to these kinds of formats in a Zoom context. But there's this other piece around managing the payments, right? And trying to promote programs and services, and then how to effectively and efficiently take payment and operationalize the payment end. So for me, it was a big deal, but I integrated Stripe into my website, and it's just been an easy and almost seamless approach to taking orders for certifications that I'm delivering, or a leadership development program that I'm promoting. And it's a different way of doing business, but that one change for me has been pretty significant.
Awesome. And I think the more and more service-based businesses are saying, you know, how do I used to do it a certain way, collect payments, do things. And now with the shift, you know, how much of this can I transfer over to the digital side? Quite a bit. And I think that services tends to be one of the categories where or types of businesses where you can make some fundamental shifts very fast, because there's no physical object that's necessarily being transferred from the company to the customer. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it was relatively easy, although it took a little bit of courage, because you're used to delivering in person and then now you're online. So it's a different way of learning design and development, for sure. It's where for me, my expertise would be in experiential learning design, and now there's not that experiential piece. So how do you try to simulate that in an online forum? So that's been interesting. But the challenge, I think, for me, and part of my goal for being in the exchange, is how to scale a service-based business. And now we're in this crazy time, you know, and looking at scaling. And when you're being sought out for your expertise and experience, and how do you maximize that with others and grow and build your business during this time? So it's been an interesting journey.
I can interject a little bit. I was going to say that, just like Lorraine, I do leadership coaching and development as well. And what I have found is that although there is a growing need for more online, we have as well a group of people that are thirsty for the one-to-ones, that are thirsty for the in-person experiential. So I have found that although myself, I feel like I need to work more on the online, and I am so behind on that. Partially because I am so partial to the one-on-one experiential. But I know that is the challenge for me, as well as Lorraine pointed out for herself as well. However, because there is this growing thirst for one-on-one or the experiential in person, I have found that recently that has been something that I have taken note of and jumped on. And that has been extremely great. And I have seen the rewards of that. So I'm very thankful for that as well.
Thanks for sharing that. You know, one thing I'm going to say also to both Lorraine and to Jackie is the there is a secondary benefit, and it's just as important on this slide, which is that you can boost your enterprise value. It means exactly what you're saying. If you digitize some of your processes and your customers respond well to that, where they can make the payment, they can schedule with you, they can take some of those tasks out, simplify those tasks so that they can get on to having a one-on-one with you or a conversation. They can actually get to the value that you are creating, the services that you're offering. Some businesses have said just by digitizing, their volume of business has gone through the roof. And there's many examples out there that have shown that end-to-end digitization is not simply to make it easier for your customer, but the benefit of that being you don't have to make, like, for example, if they're booking through your system and they're paying through the system, you just have to show up and have the conversations. And what's that done to your time? Right? Like it really does provides an opportunity for you to maximize your volume of work that you can put through your through your business. Does that make sense?
I just have
Mandy,
one.
I think I missed you. I know Mandy had a question,
Oh,
and jump
yeah.
in there, Mandy. Sorry.
Hey, Janet, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, really, I was just going to touch on some of the digitization that I've done because I am a solopreneur. Previous to COVID, I did have a reception team. I don't now. What I have been doing is promoting the fact that I have an app for the website. So often I'll get people that will show up early for their appointments, or sometimes they won't have an appointment. They'll believe they've completed the online booking process, but they just show up at my door. They're excited to receive treatment. And of course, if I'm available, I'm going to treat them. However, that's not always the case. So I've just been really promoting that we do have an app, utilizing as much automation as is possible within the website there and just making it really user friendly. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on some of the topics that you were discussing there, Nick. What about scaling via online course offerings? So for example, I'm a service-based business. You know, my business is reliant on my ability to see clients in person, and I spend prolonged, close physical contact with my clients. Of course, in an environment like COVID, that is a very variable experience. You know, yesterday, maybe we wouldn't have been so concerned about the numbers. Now today we've got 48 new cases, so I have to be a lot more cautious. Don't know how long we'll be able to operate. However, I am specialized in what's called biohacking, in teaching people how to utilize their and access their nervous system in order to, you know, reduce musculoskeletal pain, headaches, improve range of motion, all that stuff. So what about people like myself or anyone else with a great set of skills that wants to be able to, you know, interact with their clients and scale their business, but in a truly digital sense via, you know, online course offerings that are pre-recorded?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's a great way to scale business, especially when people can pay you money to have a pre-recorded video, which doesn't require you to be there in present to deliver it. It's a great scaling model. It comes with a few challenges, and the number one that I'm aware of when I talk to clients and businesses is perception of value. So what that means is people are willing to pay a higher amount of money for something when they know that it's a one-to-one and it's alive, it's an engaged connection, a conversation. People will pay for the pre-recorded material, but the value and perception of value is not the same as if they could have you live. So my comment to you on that is, if you want to scale pre-recorded materials, it absolutely makes sense. It can be done, and it's becoming more and more popular. People's consumer behavior, people have changed their habits, and they're more and more receptive to that concept. The test will be, can you charge the amount that you want to charge in order to create the value back to you to even do it in the first place? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does make sense. And I think, for just my own purposes, if I were to go about this, it's not going to be as in-depth, like you said, as if they were to come see me for an hour session. However, I think we could do a little bit of a primer, offer a little bit of a primer course, and maybe charge less, but then seek to increase volume that way. So if I look at the data on hits on my website, I have international hits. I've got a ton of hits from South America. Over the weekend, I had some hits from Europe as well. Part of that is due to some of the training that I've had. I've been taught by international teachers who have come to Canada to teach, or I'm specialized in a modality that's taught internationally and was in the first group of specialists when that program was launched in 2017. So how can I monetize that outside of just offering retail online on my website? So it would be through something like that, a bit of a primer course, and maybe my pricing is a little bit lower, right? But seek to, be profitable through volume.
I think you answered the question yourself. So yes to what you just said, but I will also say you could even use the online primer as as part of your sales funnel in order to get people to move to the one-on-one. So you can really benefit on both ends of that.
And one thing I was going to add too is this is where our different income streams comes into play too. So you can have different income streams, and this can certainly be one, and then you can have the one-to-one income streams as well. So depending on which it is that you want to scale up, but you always have that option for both.
100%.
The last thing I'll say is, I really appreciate that comment and that insight, Janet, because previous to COVID-19, I was working, 66 hours a week, 65 hours a week as one person, plus all the back end, which is a lot. It's not sustainable. So really it's about offering, as we've discussed in past, as a premium service, setting a bit more strict hours to have work-life balance, and then diversification.
Makes total sense. And I can see your style of business could really benefit from looking at the different value chains that you're suggesting and being able to say, I can charge X to do it if you want my conversation this way, but if you want me one-on-one, it's a different price. Totally makes sense. And so you can do that, and you can apply that very consistently through your different pricing structures. I just realized, I'm going to just pause. I realize I'm on number 2 of 5, and I realize I'm also running out of time. So I'm going to maybe move this along, but I do want to encourage that this conversation that we're having, I really hope, because I believe right after this, you're going to have some roundtable conversations. Keep what we're talking about here for those conversations. You may discover that many of you have similar opportunities, and maybe flush those out in your conversation in the roundtable too. Okay, so I'm just going to put that out there. Another thing that I want you to think about too, another theme that's happened as a result of COVID, is that what companies and businesses, solopreneurs, everyone is doing is they're looking at their capital cost and operating expenses, and they're looking for transparency. So in the past, what would happen is business would say, well, I usually just pay X amount, and it costs me a certain amount of money to do business. Everybody's rolling up the sleeves, digging in a little deeper, taking a really good look at the operation. How does that product or that structure or that equipment, how much value is it creating in my overall business? How am I creating profitability with that model? Or if I'm introducing a service or I have 3 different types of service offerings in my business, is 2 of them actually carrying the third, or is the third profitable on its own right? So businesses are looking at their overall cost structures. They're doing something, it's called value stream maps. I don't know if that's familiar language to you. It's where you look at the whole journey to say someone comes in and engages with your business. You take a look at all the different things that you'll do to fulfill that offering, and at the other end, you get paid, you get this check, and you're paid money for it. What people are doing is they're taking a good look to say, how I currently service that client, it takes 10 steps in order for me to deliver. Now that they're looking at it carefully, they might discover, I could do the same thing, achieve the same goal. Customer is as happy, and I did it in 7 steps, therefore cutting down the amount of time and labor and efforts that I needed to put into delivering that in the first place. This conversation is all about looking into your business and saying, can I do things better? Once again, I'll open this up to say, does this resonate with you? Is this something that you are doing or maybe should be doing?
I don't know, Nick, if mine is really a capital expense thing. Mine is more that I need to look at marketing myself better, is what my gap is right now and what I'm working on. It's like, what's weird is I am a web design business, but I've never been a social media being. It's like I never really liked social media, so I'm having to learn to accept social media and how to market best on social media. So I'm a little below the curve with that. I know it sounds weird from a web design space. That's not my thing, but I've just never been a public person online. I've always liked privacy, and so now I'm having to rejig my thinking and open myself up that way.
Fair comments. And part of marketing yourself is part of the operating process. So coming to the it's almost like in some ways what this slide is saying, what can you find that you can get rid of that doesn't make sense for your flow? What Tristina is almost saying is, I think I actually have to invest the time to do the marketing. It's almost perfectly the reverse. By the way, you're touching into an area I absolutely love. The marketing and the sales and marketing is my passion as well. So I agree with you. Those are absolutely fundamental things, and investing in that makes complete sense. So totally agree with you on that.
Can I just throw into that? I know you have a discomfort with social media and feeling like you have to market yourself, but always remember that you're really marketing how you help others, and that makes it feel less about you. It really is about the problems your clients are experiencing. It's really their story that you want to tell. So that takes a bit of the pressure off of that, this isn't about me. This really is about what I can do for you and how I can help you.
The thing is, like, I watched Veronique's thing the other day, and I know Veronique from the past because I have worked in the mining sector. She worked for Verano, so I've known her for years and years. But I give her such credit, like when she talked about the videos during her talk, and then people asked her, well, do you have videos afterwards? She's like, nope, I just put them out there. And I looked at myself and said, Nana. I'd be like going through and like, did I do this right? Did I do that right? Did I do this right? It's like, I would self-analyze so many things, Janet. It's not even funny. It's like, so I'm so far from videos yet. It's just getting posts out there at the moment is what I'm all about. The video part is like, I'm not even there. But yeah, I appreciate how you say it's about your clients and how you get involved with them and how you benefit them. It's like I'm having to wrap my head around that. And I am a perfectionist at heart, so that's one of my downfalls too, is that I need to make sure that everything's shiny and polished when it goes out. So I need to let go of that some too. So I think, Nick, it's not just increasing, or it's basically, I think with me, it's letting go of even personal feelings on matters to grow in a better way is something I have to do.
I mean, that's a very fair statement. And, one of the things that I was going to make comment on about social media is it was one of those tools and those technologies where it leveled the playing field a little bit for people, in that in the past you used to have these uberly expensive corporate videos to try to show how fancy you were and how professional you looked. And what did social media do? People use their cell phone. It's bumpy, it moves, and they're telling stories and they're sharing and they're communicating. And you know what? People find that more authentic. People actually say this is real. So I think that the question I would pose to you is, like, you're right, Tristina. One of the challenges is sometimes you do have to get a little bit vulnerable, and I've had that conversation with others. The payback, the return for that is, I think you'll come into your own when you just take a shot. You just try it. You'll see how many people will really sort of resonate and connect with you, just because of that authentic way that you present yourself.
Thanks. That's a good tip. Thanks, Nick.
Welcome. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to just move to the next one. As I said, you have plenty of time to have these dialogues with your board, and I'm doing my absolute best to try to stay on schedule here. So I'll move on to the next one, which is about driving the future of work. And this really says that, look, roles, staffing, people are going to change. The roles that you have, there's going to be a definite decrease in roles that are manual and repetitive, and you're going to see the upswing of analytical and technical type skills. So people are going to need to reskill. You're going to see more embracing of remote working. It's going to be the norm for a while. And what companies, so including solopreneurs, what's going to happen is you're going to make decisions to say, how much of this should I do at the local level, and where should I have some sort of a specialist working for me, or as part of my team from afar, and I need them for very specific activities. Does any of that resonate to you and your businesses? Love to hear about that, please.
I'll just mention for myself, it's mostly legal, to be honest. You know, everything else I can use automation as much as possible, but in terms of things like offering the biohacking course, I have to be a little bit careful in terms of the material that I release due to legal stipulations, and then things like, yeah, just like non-competes and stuff like that.
Yep, that makes total sense. Others like to share?
Because I run my business pretty well. It's me and a couple part-time staff. I actually have hired someone to work on my Instagram and like do my social media.
Makes total sense. You know, allocate your resources where they're the most effective for the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to share anything? Okay. So I'll move on to the final pivot and the final trend that we're seeing as a result of COVID, which is really reimagining sustainable operations, competitive advantage. So what's really happened is that we've now discovered for the first time in a long while that customer expectations and demand patterns, industry structures, they're all shifting. And so what businesses are doing are they're saying, well, how do we still satisfy, make the customer happy, excited to work with us, but what do we do? What are the changes, the pivots we can do in our business in order to continue to grow and help build that competitive advantage, not just for today or the next couple months, but in the long game. So it's really asking that question again, if you aren't thinking about these pivots and these changes that you need to do right now, but saying which of them are going to stick with me, which one of them are going to permanently be part of my changes, then the question is, why not? So when we look at some of the moves that you could possibly do, things like from focusing on specific technologies, like maybe you become the number one business for a particular market niche. If you haven't explored that in the past, maybe now is the time. What about being particularly strong and known for speed and flexibility in a certain area? When you're looking at your business to say, like, maybe you're the next, maybe you've been a piece of the chain, say, for a service. What if you're the one-stop shop that, or you could become the one-stop shop that can give you this competitive advantage for the long haul? By you making some changes right now, looking at ways that you want to run your business and grow it into the future, is there some opportunity here for you to firmly entrench yourself as the new, go-to business for a particular product or service? Does that make sense? I'd love to hear from you to say, is this on your mind, and what are you doing about it right now?
Hi, I'm a safety consultant, and primarily I've worked in manufacturing in the past decades or couple decades.
Right.
But I have branched now. Like last week, I actually spent the week in Calgary learning about the energy sector, right? You know, oil and gas and solar and that kind of stuff. Just to say, no, I'm not manufacturing. I am construction. I am energy, right? Depending on where that goes. So re-skilling myself to new things is something that I do a lot. The other things that we've talked about, I'm just me. I'm a solopreneur, and my new normal is the same as my old normal, right? I go to facilities. In some of the places I go, I am considered an essential employee. So that wasn't interrupted too much, but the change hasn't been as big for me as a lot of others have happened. Because I have to view the facilities online is not the same acceptable type of thing. But my big thing is branching out to different sectors and making sure I can cover them all, and not just manufacturing. And what I do is I am your safety manager through a regular visit and virtually, and I don't know anyone else who does that, right? So trying to break that into their minds and say, no, this is what can happen, right, has been difficult. So yeah, so that's one thing that I have done, and I do think I have a pretty good niche. I just got to get it out there.
Love it. And I think the way you're approaching it makes complete sense. That's the way that all of us should be looking at our businesses and asking ourselves, how do we take these changes that are coming at us and how do we convert them into long-term advantages? That sounds like a really great conversation, I think, as well, to have as part of the board and to ask each other these questions. So very quickly, I'm just going to reread these off to you here in review. So we talked about operational resilience. We talked about end-to-end digitization. We talked about paying attention to your costs in a deeper level. We talked about the future of work and hiring for roles that make sense in the future for you. And then taking a look at these opportunities of change and saying, how do I make these sustainable for me? So that's really as far as I'm able to go in this conversation for today. I wanted to basically just leave you with a couple thoughts here. So a lot of these topics that I shared with you today, they're published, they're out there. They're saying, people are in businesses are saying, these are the themes that are rising to the occasion where people have to say, if I want to be in business in the future, I need to pay attention to these. They may not all apply to you, and that's okay. but some of them will, and some of them, and the ones that do, ask yourself if you are taking full advantage of them and they're working in your favor. So I'm going to leave that. Hopefully, we had some, like, I felt like we had some really great thought provoking conversations today. Some questions were left unanswered, but I hope those can be answered even as part of your board. If that's not, or if you're looking for more answers and ideas, don't hesitate as well. If you're all working with an advisor at WESC, reach out to your advisor. Let's have those conversations, because this is what's going to allow you to continue to grow and thrive and build your business so that you can prosper so during, amidst, and post COVID life. So thanks very much. I really enjoyed having the chance to talk to everyone here and share it, and thanks for participating. These conversations are the most valuable when we have dialogues like this. So think it over, have some deep thoughts with your board, and don't hesitate to stay in touch as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's been wonderful to have you, and it's good for us to be able to talk about operations, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more shortly, but we do have a break coming up for everyone. So you have two options. It is a 15-minute break. After 10 minutes, if you're ready to stretch